2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christof Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the 50th episode of the Power of Music Thinking. Thank you. Yeah, really exciting. Because in the last 50 episodes, we learned about analogies between music, business, and society, life hacks, personal stories and experiences, innovations and inspirations. So I want to thank all the guests who shared their time, stories, and experiences with me, and especially you, the listener. Thank you for your attention, your listening, your feedback, interaction on LinkedIn, Twitter, or any other medium. I've had the pleasure of taking you inside the minds of some of the world's most exciting people that are also music thinkers. Professionals that in some way or another use music, musical principles, instruments and techniques to work meaningfully together. You could hear conversations with the data alchemist of the biggest streaming platform and many, as I call them, the end musician, like the CEO of a digital platform that is also the conductor of a big band, or the astrophysicist who works as a songwriter for German Schlager stars. A global design director of a well-known design firm playing guitar, teaching at a top-notch music and art school, or the director of a famous design and art school that was a worldwide performing musician and conductor of classical music, and many more around the world, from California to New York, from Finland to Switzerland, and from India to Nigeria. Please check them out. It is an inspirational music thinking horn of plenty. Yeah, and this feels like a big community worldwide. Also you now listening to me, to us, sharing examples of parallel thinking and using music thinking as a tool to understand and solve problems. But today's a special episode of the Power of Music Thinking podcast. Not just because of the anniversary, but because there will be no guest today, but lots of sound examples, or better, sounds I recorded in July in Italy, because my ears and the rest of my body were literally on vacation. So, if you have already been on a vacation or are just about to go, I encourage you to open your ears to everything you can hear. Listen to people talking in different languages, to beautiful sounds, natural sounds, animal sounds, functional sounds, but also the annoying, the special, and the ugly. Open your mind and your listening brain because, as we learned in the last episode with Professor Nina Kraus, you can only hear what you know. So, we have to know a lot before we can hear it. By the way, if you haven't heard that episode, please do, especially the beginning with a short exercise to experience what listening in noise means. But now let's get on our trip, or better yet, the sound walk of the summer. So, hello, we are in Venice, Italy, and we hear a lot of different water sounds. The sea, the seagulls, boats. In the city, gondolas, sounds of nature, and people talking in different languages. But also sometimes sounds of cars, motors, and electric buses when you are at the Lido, where we had our hotel. So in the city itself, there are no roads, only water transport. And water is a central theme in everything you hear. This gives the city a special sound quality that is so different from any other city. Every 2 years, my wife and I visit the Art Biennale of Venice. The Biennale is held in, let's say, 3 places: the Giardini, the Arsenale, and all over the city. We took for every place a whole day, and for us it's an inspiration, also a ritual about creativity in the broadest sense, to learn, to unlearn, to relearn, and encounter new things that make you rethink. So this time, I brought my recording device with me to hear, listen, and walk the city and the exhibitions with open ears. So be my guest while I was walking with my ears and microphone open. So, if you go on vacation, you might have some expectations about the weather, the place, the accommodation, the people you might meet, and how everything looks, feels, tastes, smells, and sounds. In my case, I was prepared to record a lot of bird sounds. I expected that birds in the city would accompany our sound walk. So, for a long time, one book was on top of my Tsundoku pile of books. I wanted to finally read Why Birds Sing by Professor of Philosophy, author and musician David Rothenberg. I thought it's a perfect book for this vacation, so I was prepared. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to a rattling sound. It was already quite loud. It was not a bird. It was the sound of a cicada. Well, many of them. These little insects that you can hear clearly but hardly see. I listened to this soundscape for a while. Not as an annoying sound, but more like a curious ear that wanted to hear the whole thing. And there was more. After a while, I heard 3 layers of sound. There was a kind of enduring sound, like a drone, man-made, a machine, maybe an air conditioner somewhere. There were cicadas. And now I also heard some doves, turtle doves. You could hear them in unison, but every layer of sound was also on itself. And the cicada sounded until 5:45, and then they stopped. Around 7, they began again. I heard 16th notes like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then from time to time an acceleration, so bzzz, a culmination or tipping point, and then falling back into rhythm again without a break. Not all cicadas sound at the same time, so when a new one starts, it begins a bit slower with an accelerando, like jit, 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 and then joins the flow. And now we also hear the sounds of the buses. They are electric here. You hear the dove. And garbage vans picking up glass, people talking with each other in dialogue, or one part of a dialogue while using their earplugs with the phone. So walking along the street, very funny just to hear people talk without seeing someone else. No children sounds at that time. And the doves fall in from time to time, and traffic coming up, cars, motorbikes. Remember, we're on the Lido, that's little island before the city. So, but I was struck, positively surprised about the sound quality and the quality of percussion. It sounded like they are really making music, and I wanted to know more about it. And suddenly I realized that years ago I had bought the digital edition of another book by Rothenberg, and it was right here on my iPad. As you can imagine, I also have a digital Tsundoku pile. By the way, Tsundoku, that's the Japanese name for if you pile up books and you never read them, or later read them, or you just pile them up for reading later. No, doesn't matter. So unbelievable. So I started my reading vacation with bug music, How Insects Gave Us Rhythm and Noise. So that's the name of the book. I also put it in the show notes, by the way. So the first day already set my listening direction not only to the art and the city, but also to the animals, and in special the cicadas. And in the book, I read a short quote. It is as if we have always intuitively known that the sonic declarations of animals. Oh, let's just let that pause. I do it again. So it is as if we have always intuitively known that the sonic declarations of animals make much more sense to us humans if we consider them to be music rather than language. Maybe that's a good idea, just to include them in the listening without trying to understand what they really do, but enjoying how it sounds like. So you're warned, or better, now you know the sound of cicadas and you will hear them in most of the recordings. Unbelievable. I never realized this, but I think in nearly every recording you hear something like in the background. So, but let's not listen to it as noise. It's just another layer of the sound walk when you visit Venice in the summer. So, about the Biennale. Every Biennale has a theme. And this year, the theme was Stranieri ovunque, or in English, strangers everywhere. So I knew about the theme before. I came for the sound, and now it was not only Stranieri ovunque, or suoni ovunque, means sounds everywhere. So it's you will also hear the cicada ovunque, or cicadas everywhere. Okay, little joke. Okay. Oh, and maybe I should give a little disclaimer. This is not a review of the Biennale, but a personal sound walk. This means you can only experience the full artwork installation if you've been there. It's like a performance. Performance on a video is always it's always second best. So, and the Biennale is open until 24th of November, so there's still time to go there, and I think it's worth the trip. So, like making pictures where you don't have sound, smell, taste, etc., I give you some audio expressions of things I heard while I was there. And this can also be something that has nothing to do with the artwork, but it was just there. Like now, where you are at the moment, there is always sound, and you're still listening to me, and the other sound, it mixes together. But we will come to that part later again. So it's like people talking and cicadas rattling. There's always something that is there. So this sound walk is less to understand, but more to enjoy interesting sounds from an interesting place. And yes, I will give you some information. So let's go to some places. And now let's start with, let's walk into the Chiesetta della Misericordia, a small church. We are now in the middle of the city, and you walk there, and we just saw the poster outside, and we're drawn by the immersive soundscape of Nikomuli and the paintings from Yu Hong. Big paintings that were positioned in a half circle in the church, and on the left and on the right. You see paintings in a realistic style showing bodies on a golden yellowish background in a kind of psychological displacement from birth to death, with the title, Another One Bites the Dust. The soundscape we learned was inspired not by Queen, as you might have thought, but by Baroque composer Dietrich Buxtehude and his cantata Membra Jesu Nostri. And by the way, Buxtehude was a Danish composer of the early Baroque period and influenced by Johann Sebastian Bach and George Handel. So he influenced these grand composers and now a musician from our times. So the American composer Nico Muhly mixed parts of the Buxtehude cantata with electronic sounds, Baroque and Renaissance instruments to a new 1-hour composition named To the Body. The sound and the pictures went very well together, and we were there quite a long time, watching the paintings, making connections between the pictures and the sound, trying to make sense of the people talking and creating our own story. It had a very calming effect. There were only a few people there, and with new ears we walked outside to the canal right in front of the church. But let's just hear a little bit more of it. Isn't this beautiful? From this experience, this art experience, you just walk out the church and you're on the street, on the water street, and the boats are passing by, people are talking, like this is very much Venice. Nearly an hour foot walk away, we are now at the beautiful area called Giardini, with all the separate national pavilions, everyone different in size, style and acoustics. We are now in the German pavilion. The theme here is thresholds. Here's some info. In a time of uncertainties and catastrophes, boundaries and thresholds hold a particular meaning. As a loaded space of experiencing and suffering, as a camouflaged place of division, the border is also and always a professional space. So we see a huge video projection with a floating model of a spaceship. It reminds me a bit to the science fiction film Silent Running from 1972, if you might have seen this. But also to the novel Seven Eves by Neil Stevenson, a speculative fiction about the future. So these might be inspirations. And in the main room, I walked up the stairs into a multi-story installation that was connected to the early 1960s migrants to Germany, the so-called Gastarbeiter, guest workers, working in dust and unhealthy working conditions. Everything was dusty and many people did cough just from looking at the scenery. The sound from the video, so the science fiction, and the installation blend together with... Did you hear the cicadas in the background? All right. Connected to the German pavilion is a sound installation on the island of Certosa, a vaporetta boat ride away from Giardini. We are pretty much alone here, so you hear the sounds of nature, a drone from the distance, and there are some contact microphones attached to a foil hanging in the tree, and the sounds from motorboats in the distance, and some sound installation. A very nice soundscape overall. Okay, my wife thought it was pretty boring. But here's a short excerpt from walking back via the long wooden pier to the Vaporetto. Also kind of threshold if you want. And please recognize how the cicadas get softer and the boat sounds get harder while walking.
Blind and deaf to make clear their distinctions from each other. On the skin, certainly in the ear. This is because doorways divide space, but also prepare us for it, and the ear translates outside, inside, thus rendering space intimate, giving emptiness, character. This is why migration is also an act of listening. Doorways are physical markers of transition. However, it's likely that only immigrants remember this, or those for whom place is either traumatic memory or hesitant aspiration. This might be why in such houses, doorways may be decorated with small tokens and reminiscences of paths taken and not taken, of those left behind, lost in the undertow. Desks or tables as the comforts of certainty crumble, shake, and shatter. Doorways, however, are more than load-bearing structures or obligatory demarcations. If we pay attention to our motion through them, it is possible to acknowledge a shift in pressure, sometimes sound, because spaces, even to blind and deaf, make clear their distinctions from each other. On the skin, certainly in the ear. This is because doorways divide space, but also prepare us for it, and the ear translates outside, inside, thus rendering space intimate, giving emptiness character. This is why migration is also an act of listening. Doorways are physical markers of transition. However, it's likely that only immigrants remember this, or those for whom place.
Okay, we are back in Giardini, in the British pavilion now. It starts outside with the sound of dripping water. It's about 30 degrees and the cicadas are very present and not part of the installation, so as you can imagine. And we walk through huge video installations of John Akomfra. He's an artist and filmmaker whose work is an investigation into memory, racial injustice, the experiences of migrant diasporas, and climate change. The theme here is listening all night to the rain. The exhibition is seen as a manifesto that encourages the idea of listening as activism and is conceived as a single installation with 8 interlocking and overlapping multi-screen sound and time-based works. So the exhibition is open-ended in structure and reflective of the artist's abiding interest in nonlinear forms of storytelling and collage. So that fits pretty good with the sound walk we are doing right now. So I will play for you a longer piece here because the sounds are very rich, and you can bring in your own thoughts and pictures to what you hear. Like the quote printed big above one of the entrances. It's a quote by Pauline Oliveros, and you might have heard this name before if you have switched into one of the 50 episodes. And this could also be a theme for this sound walk. It goes like this: listen to everything until it all belongs together and you are part of it. All right. That was quite, soundscape. We are now in the Japanese pavilion. And the Japanese pavilion and the composition, visually and acoustically by Yuko Mori, is characterized by the transformative nature of ordinary objects and common situations. So you see buckets, hoses, rotten fruit, and it is inspired by the various and ad hoc efforts seen in the Tokyo subway stations to stop water leaks. The service staff often use everyday items like buckets, plastic bottles, and hoses to cope with the small crisis. And so this is a big improvisation with common household goods set in scene and with the intent to make interesting sounds. So let's listen a bit to the soundscape and imagine everything that's going on. By the way, all the talking is just the visitors. The sound you just heard, this snare drum, this one, that's a water hose hanging on a snare drum, with a drumstick, and it depends on how the water behaves, so that the drumstick gets the trigger to make that sound. So there's a lot going on like this. Also rotten fruit where sensors are in, and these are these harmonics in the background. You hear these are from rotten fruit. So now we walk outside in the rear part of Giardini that you can reach via a small bridge. We walk in the cicada soundscape. Unbelievable. And now let's have a look at the Egyptian pavilion. It is a film, actually an opera set in a scene. It lasts 40 minutes, so it's nicely made. It's really, really nice to see. You have the subtitles and you have this beautiful sound of Egyptian. And let's walk out again to the next pavilion. So we're in the Polish pavilion now. There's a big screen showing one person.
Повторяйте за мной.
All right, so this is really something special. It really makes you think. It's an Ukrainian refugee.
Повторяйте за мной.
Asking us to, like in karaoke style, do the sound of one of these bombs that flying into Ukraine. So the whole thing is about, it's an interactive installation. There are microphones, many microphones in the front of the video, and different refugees make sounds they learned in wartime, and ask us to in karaoke style to repeat it. So it's this feels very strange. No, by the way, no one was doing it, and it really makes you think, and it really makes you think with your ears how these sounds have a devastating impact.
Пройдіть в укриття.
Okay, now you see in the video the woman, she's making these sounds of the air alarm. And it's part of daily life. It's part of like the cicados to Italy. These sounds are unfortunately now in Ukraine.
Повторюйте за мною. Увага! Громадяни, повітряна тривога.
One of the first pavilions when you get in the morning is the Pavilion of Belgium. And it's our last for today. So we ended our Giardini day with the Belgian Pavilion, where a collective called Petticoat Government brings together 7 folkloristic giants. You have to imagine now giant puppets. They were on a very big podium, you could say. You could only see them from below, and there was music all over. So the puppets were from Spanish Basque country, north of France and Belgium. And I read the music is inspired by a song called 20 Hertz by Capricorn, and is a production in a subgenre of house music. So let's say house music live played on acoustical instruments. And when we walk out again, do you have any other sonic associations? Oh yeah, the seagulls are laughing at us. So there's a lot of inspiration. But this was Giardini for today. And let's get over to the next and also to our last one, to Arsenale. Now we're in Arsenale, some 100-meter walk from Giardini, and we hear the sounds from the Italian pavilion. For me, the sonic highlight of the Biennale. So, first I did a sound walk through the whole installation. Oh, but let's hear first. I'll explain a bit more later. This is a huge room-filling installation of scaffolding pipes by Massimo Bartolini. And as we learn later, it is done in the way of a Baroque garden, so you could walk through it in different ways, with a circular structure in the function of a fountain as the center. So, but only what you see is scaffolding pipes. Only if you experience it, if you go into the sculpture, then you get the idea of, let's say, that garden idea. And the music is played on two different sets of big wooden organ pipes. So you will not see them so quickly in a church. So these were wooden elements, big wooden pipes made of wood. Playing a composition by two young musicians at the leading edge of experimental and electronic music, so Caterina Barbieri and Kali Malone, and their joint contribution named A Reflection That Shines from One Mind Upon Another is an antiphon in A flat major, in which two melodic lines intersect and complete each other. So these two short melodies inscribed on two motorized rolls. This is, by the way, the ticking that you hear is from these huge rolls that give the trigger to the pipes. Like a giant music box, you might have seen this before, that play in unison, so you can hear the mechanic ticking. The music plays 50 minutes with a 10-minute silent break. And while walking through the installation, the music is unique too. This one walk and will be different the next time, because sometimes you're closer to one pipe and you're in a different part of the big room. And sometimes you're closer to another one. So that's a little bit what I did while walking around. There was also a smaller room before that big room, and in one of these rooms you could also hear the huge 25-meter organ pipe driven by a fan and playing for 50 minutes with a 10-minute silent break in between, like the other composition. It was very low in volume, so I didn't record that part. But you could listen to this huge pipe if you're really getting closer. And it's 25 meters long and a very low sound, around 3 hertz. Actually, that's not hearable with our normal ears, but you can feel also the vibration. And it was very nice. Now let's get outside in the garden. And this is the grand finale of the sound walk. We enter the garden and see 3 big trees. In every tree there's a pair of boom boxes that play a choral work for 3 voices, bell plates, vibraphone by Gavin and Yuri Briers. The story goes like this. A human being has the sense of being a tree or some other form of plant. Life connected to the world by its roots in a form of osmosis. As if everything were born in me or as if I were born in everything. An immobility that is also an interaction. So also the cicadas that you already heard through the open entrances of the pavilion now are much louder. And they're, by the way, also in the tree. Everything resonates together. The composition via the portable speakers in the tree, full of cicadas in the Italian heat of noon. So you hear bits of the grand organ in the background. Sounds from the speakers and all the beautiful sounds Venice has to offer on that very place. So this is the end of our sound walk through Venice. Thanks for listening. I will give you a little bit more information about the Biennale now. So the Biennale features 331 artists and collectives living in and between 80 countries. There's so much to see, feel, smell, taste, see and hear. The show is open until medio November, as I told you. And I think it's worth to go. We saw many interesting things that I did not mention, like the Kosovo Pavilion with an interesting sound installation and story, the colorful USA Pavilion, Ivory Coast, and they had the theme Blue Note, and like it is the note that allowed Africans to survive and live. So nice tweak on the Blue Note, nice explanation. South Africa had a sound installation by a collective called Made You Look. Australia was sublime and also very confronting. The Pavilion of Grenada with the bio-art documentation. And I forgot the bone records in the Austria Pavilion. So there is so many shows and places that also only open up for the Biennale and are an experience of its own. So you can go into palaces that are normally closed. So it's really cool. So this is the end of the sound walk through the Biennale in Venice. And I want to end this with the bells of San Trovaso and the sounds of the cicadas that have accompanied us during this trip. So have a listen. If you like what you hear and you want to support the power of music thinking, please subscribe now to not miss the next 50 episodes. Give us a like or a comment, share the podcast with your friends, connect with me on LinkedIn, but please also write a short note what resonates with you, or just buy the book, The Power of Music Thinking, and or the gem cards to bring music thinking into whatever you do. Thank you for listening. some Trovaso out of Côte d'Ivoire Pavilion gegenüber vom Gondel-Reparaturplatz.